Hello and welcome. You're tuned into this fresh new edition of the Climate Clock podcast. You've been writing it and telling us what you want to know about, and that's exactly what we are doing. Today on the show, let's welcome our special guest. We have with us Mr. Mahesh Girdhar, who's the MD and CEO of EverEnviro Resource Management Private Limited. And of course, we'll ask you a lot more, Mr. Girdhar, as to what the company does. But the discussion around biofuels, biorefinery, waste management, circular economy, this is something which is vital. We need to understand it. We need to actually practice it as well. And your company is one of those which is doing it. So let's take a deep dive into this world of biogas, biofuels, and biorefinery and the circular economy as well. Uh, EverEnviro, it is largely into producing biogas. Am I right? What exactly is it, and what does it do?
So let me give you overall business we are engaged in. We are into multiple waste management streams. One of the key where we are investing significantly and developing value proposition is a compressed biogas. This one vertical, we also have a power generation plant from waste. We are also engaged into construction and demolishing waste management activity whereby we produce recycled green construction material. So our currently focus is significantly developing compressed biogas industry in the country.
Okay. So, what is biogas and how is it produced? Because we've been having a lot of conversation with listed companies, be it the energy companies, oil PSUs. They are talking about getting into this. What is exciting all these companies and yourself so much?
Okay. So let me simply first of all explain what is compressed biogas. It's called CBG in India. It's called renewable natural gas worldwide. Simply speaking, CBG is a clean form of energy or fuel which is produced from various organic sources. It could be municipal solid waste, it could be agricultural residue, biomass, or it could be agri-industry waste, or it can also be produced from green energy crops specifically, which are targeted to produce the biomass and then shifted into producing of CBG.
Okay.
Now, when it comes to CBG has more than 90% methane inside
Yeah.
it, right? And that's what is a cleaner fuel that can replace any kind of fuel we are using from fossil fuel today. It could be natural gas, it could be diesel, it could be petrol.
I was going to ask you on that. If it's methane, it is usually said methane is deadlier than CO2. Then how is it cleaner then?
So let's put methane into and CO2 into perspective. So when it comes from an environment footprint perspective, then we see that methane is about 80 times more potent gas than CO2. It can trap 80 times more energy. But the life of methane is smaller than CO2. CO2 stays much longer in the environment. However, when it comes to its usage potential, then methane is into CNG itself, right? So methane can be, CBG or CNG can be used against any other fossil fuel like diesel and petrol. So from its application perspective, when we produce CBG, it goes through a different production steps, production processes. So let me just give you a little bit understanding of how the CBG gets produced. So there are 5-6 different parts of the value chain of CBG production. First, it starts with aggregation of the biomass, securing the biomass. And again, biomass could be coming from organic waste from cities, or it could be from agriculture residue, because at the end of the harvest, whatever is left in the field is a residue, which either is getting burnt or it is not fully utilized, it becomes waste. Or it could be from agro-industrial waste, like sugar mill produce press mud, which is kind of a methane hazard. Now, all of that gets aggregated as a first step. The second is goes through an anaerobic digestion process. So it comes to the plant, and the plant we actually have a process whereby we are able to feed this, we are able to chop it and make it into smaller sizes, and then we feed it into large tanks. They are anaerobic tanks where the enzymatic based biochemical reaction takes place and raw biogas is produced. Now this raw biogas has about 50 to 55% of methane inside, and balance is CO2 and other trace gases like hydrogen or HS2S. So it goes through a purification process whereby we are able to purify the methane, bring it to more than 90% level, and then it goes through a compression process because it's a large in volume. The volume need to be reduced. So in the compression process, you compress it further. Either you can supply it through the pipeline, or you can fill into cascades, and then it is transported. Once it is reached to the use point, again it is used from the compressed, and that's why it's called compressed biogas.
Okay, all
The
right.
whole process involves these multiple steps, and the critical process into that is anaerobic digestion,
Okay.
because that's where you are actually creating and you're producing, and that the output depending on the various feedstock.
Okay, so an Arabic digestion.
Anaerobic digestion, so it is a digestion where it is non-aerobic, so it doesn't have oxygen inside.
Got it.
Yeah.
And that's why you can process that particular raw material that is coming. And where do you source all of it from? I'm sure it'll not be very close. It's not in the vicinity. So is that a longer process?
So in terms of, let's say, where is the biomass available?
Hmm.
Now biomass is spread across. It is
Hmm.
spread across in the cities
Hmm.
because we generate a lot of municipal solid waste.
Hmm.
Municipal solid waste has two components,
Hmm.
organic and inorganic.
Hmm.
Organic is basically which is food waste.
Hmm.
Second is the everywhere in the agriculture, wherever you after you harvest the crop, there is residue left.
Hmm.
Or wherever there is agro industry, there is residue left.
Hmm.
So the biomass is spread across.
Hmm.
Now you need to have a economic viability of your
Hmm.
project, and you
Hmm.
need to set up the project where you have a biomass, which means that the largely these projects are coming up in rural India, is also coming up in the cities where you have a biomass available. Second requirement for that is you should have offtake potential, which means there should be market nearby. So market perspective, the CBG is an alternate fuel. It can replace diesel, petrol, or natural gas. So you need to find avenues where there is a marketing potential. It's across the country
Right.
because we are using all kind of energy everywhere.
Yeah.
So this is going into vehicular traffic, vehicular use at CNG. It is going into pipe natural gas as a replacing LPG at homes.
Okay.
It is going as a industrial uses for heating units. Right. So it's a multiple widespread uses. So from a use and availability perspective, it's an impact nationwide. It is
Okay.
actually more I would say holistic in nature, because this is touching millions of people. This is
Okay.
touching lives of each individual who is generating waste, and we see waste around. It's causing issues around pollution, air pollution, water pollution, and it's not clean environment, right?
Yeah.
More than that, these waste actually emit either methane or CO2. I just said that methane is a much more potent gas, and if our waste was supposed to end up in the landfill, it would create significant methane emission, right? By capturing that through this CBG technology and CBG projects, we are able to put waste into right use.
I have so many questions with what you told me right now.
Sure.
But first up, when you say it can replace LPG, CNG, so the composition differs a lot when it comes here only in terms of raw material or the final product as well.
Okay. So raw material is basically we are using as a feedstock to produce
Correct.
CBG.
Hmm.
Right. When it comes to its equivalence to natural
Yeah.
gas, it can very well replace either diesel or petrol or CNG. It is exactly same like CNG. CNG has a methane percentage high. It has methane. So from its usage perspective, wherever natural gas is used, CBG can be used.
Okay, so it can be a proper alternative there, but less polluting, and that's why
Less
there's so much
polluting,
focus there.
because what's happening when you have fossil fuel, when you are extracting fossil fuel, you are releasing the greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. Here we are capturing available biomass which will otherwise end up creating greenhouse gas emissions. We are able to capture and create a very closed loop carbon cycle, and that is why it is clean.
Yes, because you're using existing resources, not asking for more resources from the
Yes.
environment as well.
And one more point I'll add, that
Yes,
from a
please.
calorific value perspective, CBG has slightly higher calorific value on a
Okay.
per kg basis versus the normal fossil fuel like petrol, diesel. It's as good as CNG.
I was just going to ask you that. Is it as efficient as the other fuels? Because sometimes people are scared to try newer fuels or alternative fuels,
No,
right?
no, CBG is very reliable, efficient, green, sustainable alternate fuel, right?
Okay.
And just to give you an example, that we set up our first project in Indore with Indore Municipal Corporation. It was inaugurated by the Prime Minister of India about 2 years back. In the last 2 years, the CBG is getting used widespread. It has been used by the buses of Indore Municipal Corporation. It has been used by vehicles through the retail points, through Avantika Gas, which is the CGD off-taker for our gas. It has been used by industries like Tata and L&T, and it is already powering millions and let's say thousands of houses in Indore.
And how is the pricing versus say a CNG?
So when it comes to price perspective, it's a market oriented price. right? Because normally there are two mechanisms of CBG pricing in India. One is under Satat mechanism, and second is a CBG sync pricing, which is defined by GAIL. So
Okay.
GAIL has developed a formula in order to bring a parity, of the pricing versus CNG, and we are driven by the formula, and it goes through various pipeline or it goes through cascade. So whenever it is going through pipeline, then the cost of compression is lower. And when
Okay.
it goes through cascades, the tanks, then the cost of load is slightly high. So it is accordingly compensated. So at par, let's say with CNG in terms of market pricing, and then there is a formula where the CBG companies get. From an industry perspective, it's again the industrial uses, and it should make economic viability for industry.
Correct.
But the main point is that it's a green gas, and the green gas, if we see the overall emerging picture with the carbon border treaty mechanism getting kicked off in Europe, right? This will create further opportunities from a green gas pricing perspective.
So are we seeing that happening? You said in Indore, you're seeing it in vehicles, commercial vehicles, or
Yes.
Tatas or L&Ts are using it.
Yes. Yes.
What percentage of consumption would it be for CBG, say, vis-a-vis in the overall gas ecosystem, so to say? What is the percentage of CBG right now, and what are the projections? How much would it be, say, 2 to 3 years down the line?
Okay. So we are very early in the CBG development. It's hardly couple of years when the institutionalized CBG development is taking place. Although biogas as a product is there for last 50 years.
Okay.
Biogas has been produced by the farmers, used for their own heating unit, household
Yes.
use, but they have not been purifying it. Compressed biogas got lot of attention based on the requirement of managing waste, and creating greener environment. Hence, as we speak today, the production of CBG is very small as on today.
Okay.
India consumes about 60 million metric ton of natural gas, and it is 6% of our energy mix. It is expected then by 2030, the natural gas will be about 15% of energy mix, which will be close to 150 million metric ton overall requirement. We today import about 46% of that. Now, the way Satat has emphasized the growth potential, at present there are multiple, about 200 projects are coming up. And it is expected by 2028, as per Satat database, 750 projects would come up,
Okay.
which would mean that between then there will be significant quantity of CBG available for blending. And Government of India also has come up with the blending mandate
Right.
from 1% to 5% over the next 5 years. So both of these factors together will drive the CBG demand. And we expect that from a overall potential perspective, if we see biomass available in the country is about 250 million metric ton.
Wow.
If you theoretically convert that, this can actually produce 60 million metric ton of CBG. However, even if 10% of that gets converted, it's a significant mix of energy of the greener energy into overall energy bucket of country.
Right, and that is basically the amount that we are already consuming right now.
That's
So,
right.
and
That's right.
producing right now, at least in the country. So that is a big amount. And how do you is the supply chain very easy when you say raw material pricing or raw materials taking it all from rural area, municipal corporations? How does the pricing work there? Is it contractual that this is how much you'll get every month, and what is the utilization there? So for what amount of raw material, what amount of gas is
Gas
produced?
can be produced. Fine. So there are, let's say, there are four kind of different feedstock sources, right? Out of the total 250 million metric ton, about 70% is agricultural waste. About 15% is waste coming out of the cities, and rest 15% is based on the agro industry, and 5 to 10% agro industry. And energy crops are yet to take shape in the country. So when we talk about its potential production, CBG, it varies from 1% to 20%.
Okay.
Animal dung is another source of that. Now, there are different models for different feedstock. When it comes to municipal waste, it gets generated in the city every day.
Correct.
The urban local bodies contract and tie up through bidding process
Okay.
with the players, and then there is a long-term offtake agreement whereby It is responsibility of the ULB to deliver the waste at our plant, and
Right.
from there we take into the whole process. We segregate it further and then translate into CBG. So that's a model which is very much, let's say daily it gets produced. Second, industry produces daily, where again there's a B2B tie-ups, and we as a EverEnviro have already tied up with largest of the sugar mills operators in UP, where we have a 20-25 year long-term agreement.
Okay.
It's a captive use, and daily generation happen. On agricultural side, it is only generated in the end of the harvesting season.
Got it.
So it's twice in a year, depending on the crop. For example, paddy straw, which is very prevalent use today, is that it is getting burned, right? It is not even going as a fodder much.
Correct.
And that comes once or twice, once in a year in North India, maybe twice in a year in southern part of India. So there you need to actually procure it for the full year, because your plant had to operate the full year, and it is coming from the farmer's field. So that's a holistic development, whereby the entire value chain is getting developed, right from mechanization, right from reaping, harvesting, baling equipments. They are very fluffy in nature. You need to compress them, and baling operation takes place. So multiple levels of, let's say, intervention are required to actually harvest them, gather, collect, and bring to the plant.
Okay.
What we have been doing is we are creating that capacity on the ground through village level entrepreneurs. We are creating that rural jobs, and that's the circularity part of that. Because the newer job being created. Imagine a farmer who already has a tractor,
Right.
who already has a trolley. He would need to only acquire the reaping and harvesting equipment for the straw, and whereby there are support by Government of India subsidizing that mechanical equipments, and we are enabling that entire ecosystem development of harvesting and cutting and baling and taking it to our plants. So that's the major part of the development. The second major part of development is the process part of the
Got it.
processing technology.
Okay, so that also goes on to say how much it is dependent on the rural economy, how we can modernize it,
That's
or at
right.
least connect it more to ensure that we get that bio mass or biofuel out of the raw materials there, and also that we should segregate waste. That makes it easier when we are in urban society. Mr. Girdhar, I wanted to understand how big could this market be right now, and what is the growth prospects that you're seeing, considering the conversions that the government is talking about, more plants coming up.
Correct. So let's divide into, let's say, three key growth drivers. One is whether we have a biomass available. Answer is yes. You have 250 million metric ton. Whether there is a technology is there, because it's not a completely new field. It has happened in other countries earlier. Biogas has been produced. Third, do we have a demand? As the requirement for natural gas requirement is going up, there is a demand. From that perspective, there are policy frameworks which are going to enable the demand. The first policy framework is creating mandatory pull, which is by virtue of this mandatory blending mandate from 1% next year going up to 5%. So imagine we are able to take that to 10% level and utilize 10% of the biomass. This market in a near term could be about 10 to $12 billion only from gas.
Oh wow, that's a
CBG.
big number.
And longer term it can go up to 20%, because biomass is being used into multiple uses. There is a power use, there is a ethanol use, there is a CBG use, right? So if even we consider 20% gets converted into CBG, this could be a market of worth 25 to $30 billion.
Wow, that's a big number.
And by doing that, while you are setting up these projects, there is a significant amount of capex market gets created at the same time, in the range of another 25 to $30 billion.
I was actually going to ask you, is it like very costly to set up a CBG plant? How does it work?
So from an individual plant perspective, it's not thousands of crores. It
Yeah.
is though capital intensive from a small project perspective, because you need to set up large number of plants. You can't create one big plant and bring your biomass from 100, 200 kilometers. It will be not cost effective. So it is a capital intensive from a perspective of setting up. However, this capital requirement is there because these are energy plants, and the infrastructure need to be robust, need to
Yeah.
comply to various safety regulations or the ESG standards, and as well as the supply of these and management of the gas requires significant amount of investment into infrastructure. Hence these are capital intensive projects.
People are looking for newer business ideas. They are like, what can we do in the new energy space? For somebody who's looking at setting up, say, a gas plant, do you think the break even happens sooner than later? What does the business cycle look like here?
So see, this will all depend the size of the plant, whether
Hmm.
it is a small size plant, mid size plant, large size plant. This will also depend which technology is being used,
Hmm.
because there are multiple technologies available
Hmm.
for the pre-treatment digestion. Though for upgradation there are standard technologies. It will also depend what kind of feedstock you are using,
Hmm.
because the yield potential of feedstock is different, and
Acha.
what kind of feedstock security you have.
Hmm.
So there is a value proposition of the industry is emerging,
Hmm.
because there are multiple policies taking shape. Mandatory offtake is one
Hmm.
policy. There are capital grants by MNRE,
Hmm.
about 80-85 lakh per ton of CBG capacity. There are capital grant given by some states like UP.
Hmm.
So these are the incentives available, as well as there are incentives to procure mechanical instrument for biogas aggregation,
Okay.
right? And there is also support for organic manure to be offtaken.
Hmm.
So there is a consolidated support is coming. So these allow the investment quite a lot. So not only small but multiple large players are entering the field
Hmm.
now.
Which are the other players you have tied up with? I read about ONGC. Are there other listed players which are coming to you and talking about, okay, you set it up for us, we can have a partnership here?
Yeah. So uh, there are multiple players.
Hmm.
If you look into value chain, there are players who are into equipments,
Hmm.
who are into process,
Hmm.
who are into EPC.
Hmm.
There are players who are into offtake, and there are players who are developers who are setting up.
Hmm.
So we are seeing a large interest from small players and large houses like Indian Oil, BP,
Hmm.
HP, or Indraprasth Gas,
Hmm.
or even large industrial houses like Reliance Adani are investing into the field. So there is a strong interest, as well as there are multiple smaller level entrepreneurs in rural India, those who have small businesses, those who have big farms,
Hmm.
or those who have understanding or network, right, are
Hmm.
able to bring capital and
Hmm.
are able to put smaller projects. So
Hmm.
the overall the player varies between small to large, but the significant now growth is coming because large players have entered the game,
Hmm.
and that's why we are seeing number of new projects coming up. Other companies like Thermex Bioenergy Solutions is our joint venture, which
Okay.
is into the business of setting up CBG project.
Hmm.
It's an equipment service provider, EPC provider for CBG
Okay.
projects.
Okay. While we talk about other businesses or stock markets doing well, it is a gold mine that we are developing from waste. So this
Yeah.
has definitely that business potential as well.
And just not only these players, but also there are other
Hmm.
value chain players like off-takers,
Hmm.
CGD operators, right?
No, because
And
yes,
as
yeah.
well as working with multiple agro industry, like as I
Hmm.
already said, that tie up with the sugar mills to
Hmm.
offtake their
Hmm.
waste and
Hmm.
create. So there is a complete value chain integration. You have to work with the government, with the ULBs,
Hmm.
with the farmers,
Hmm.
and develop infrastructure, right? So there is a development happening in rural India.
Hmm.
More industry gets created, and at a larger scale there is pull being created through the policy framework and need for green energy.
Mr. Girdhar, honestly, is this rapid development in rural areas also happening at the same pace as much as it is needed? We have made projections, but are people as aware and as willing to, set up that infrastructure, connect with companies? Because usually there's always this, you usually face teething issues with newer industries, so to say. So,
Correct.
what are some of the limitations that you see can be addressed quickly?
Correct. No, there are certain challenges. It's as industry is emerging,
Hmm.
but as we speak today, about 200 projects are in execution.
Hmm.
So there is real work happening on the
Hmm.
ground.
Hmm.
Now, when it comes to challenge perspective, the key challenge is still access to sustainable biomass. Right,
Hmm.
that's very important that you are able to secure biomass and sustainable availability at a sustainable pricing,
Hmm.
because at the end of the day, it has to make a commercial sense.
Hmm.
Whereby at present the lot of waste is getting wasted, right? If you
Correct.
are able to channelize through the equipment and machinery, you are able to get that, and
Hmm.
there is a benefit for the farmer as well,
Hmm.
because his field gets cleared fast.
Hmm.
Otherwise, burning that or
Yeah.
even managing that is a cost to the farmer,
Hmm.
and this could be a future potential revenue generator for farmers
Hmm.
as well.
Hmm.
So that is one area where infrastructure requirement, creating logistics, warehousing, creating a kind of infrastructure overall for a biomass management, we can do
Hmm.
more there.
Hmm.
Second, as we said, these are capital intensive projects. The enabling finance,
Hmm.
equity debt finance
Hmm.
enabling is an important topic in order
Hmm.
to support the industry development. Third, while there are a number of initiatives and flurry of policies have come already, and there's active engagement by CBG industry with various ministries, and we're getting good support there. However, furthermore, the injection of the CBG into national grid, and then producing molecules somewhere in rural India and selling somewhere in industry in a city. If you are able to maintain the green property and accordingly get the benefit of the green property, would further support the industry growth. The last point is that, as I said, that CBG projects are not only about producing CBG. There, when you are feeding in feedstock, you are taking gas out. It's about 10-15%. Balance 85 to 90% is digestate, which gets converted into organic fertilizer, liquid and solid, right? And Indian soils are deficient in organic carbon. 72% of our soils are below 1% of organic carbon. What happens, because if organic carbon is low, organic manure in the soil is low, this reduces fertilizer use efficiency. We're putting more fertilizer, we are not able to take full benefit, because that gets fixed, that becomes volatile or gets leached. If you're enhancing organic carbon, you are able to utilize the fertilizer better. It gives better aeration, it has a better water holding capacity, hence it enhances yield, and farmers understand soil health improvement is required. So that's the another area where there are support coming on that, but we need to ensure that we are able to create consumption of the fertilizer coming out of these plants, organic manure, whether it is a solid form or liquid form, because then there is whatever is coming out of the plant, you are able to consume it and create a overall environment for the flourishing of the industry.
So there's already a market for that organic fertilizer that you are producing, say the 85% which is left, or it is difficult to market that?
So what's happening that, if you look into human being, we take allopathic, we get immediately all right? It's same like happens in nutrition. You put NPK nutrients and you see immediate benefit. Soil health is a bit of a sustainable long-term topic, right? The education about soil health, multiple farmers understand. When they look into their soil, they know my soil has got poor, and they used to add farmyard manure in the past. The availability of farmyard manure has reduced in the rural India, and we are able to produce this manure, which is much better because it comes through an anaerobic digestion process.
Correct.
Whereby all harmful microbes are gone, and we do further process, and it becomes a fantastic organic manure which enhances organic carbon. So there is a need perspective, a high need, awareness need to be created, and whereby initial 5-7 year pull need to be created through policy framework.
Correct.
And once that is there, then farmer will start seeing the benefit. So whenever farmer uses farmyard manure, any kind of manure, he immediately knows that yield is going to improve. And it's a proven, it's a scientific proven. It's something farmers are aware about that. But channelizing the whole ecosystem, initial support is required.
You really need a lot of awareness here, because you're talking about the benefits, but till the time they're actually seen on ground in a bigger way or spoken about in a bigger way, maybe people will be a little reluctant. But as you said, it does have a lot of benefits, and there is some policy push, some more is needed.
And we are already seeing the offtake. We are already producing liquid and solid fermented manure from our plants. We just and everywhere there is an offtake potential.
Okay, that is good to know. So where does India stand versus, say, global markets? Is the compressed biogas usage more globally, or biofuel usage more globally? How does this work?
So I can talk about CBG. They're normally called RNG in the worldwide market.
Sorry, what is it called?
It's renewable natural gas.
Renewable natural gas.
RNG, from a terminology perspective. There is already a significant usage in the consumption in Europe. Denmark is using 40% of their natural gas demand is met by CBG, RNG, through biomass. They've channelized all cow dung manure, all cow dung, they've channelized all agricultural waste into setting up industry and including the municipal waste. And they set up multiple number of plants, improve the technology. 40% is a significant number. The next comes in European countries like Germany, France, or Sweden. All of these countries have, let's say, single-digit percentage of uses of RNG into their mix of natural gas. Particularly in Germany, where they used earlier energy crops, and now realizing that they are now shifting more into agricultural waste. France is already doing the development for last 2 decades, right? So a single-digit use is already happening. In the United States, the landfills are trapping methane. and they are capturing methane from the landfill and converting it into RNG, and it is getting mixed into the national grid. And in all these countries, national grid is unable to actually inject your pipeline, and it becomes then a kind of a blended natural gas,
Oh, okay.
like ethanol blending in the
Yeah.
country.
And you can only imagine methane would be more in a country like India, where we have so much agricultural produce, or cattle for that matter, which will
Correct,
enable
correct.
that. What next for the company? What are your plans in terms of expansion? You spoke about the first plant being inaugurated in Indore.
Sure,
You are on an expansion mode.
sure.
What is the plan here?
Sure. So we currently are operating 5 plants.
Hmm.
Currently, we have the highest operational capacity in the country. And these 5 plants are in MP, UP, and Punjab. We are now working on another 15, 20 plants. So in total, about 20 plants in a different stage of construction and development. And in a near term, we will be setting up more plants, and to take our capacity to about 500 to 600 tons per day production, about
Okay.
let's say 2 lakh ton per day per annum production.
Hmm.
For that matter, we have also, as you asked the question earlier, that we already MOUs with ONGC and IOCL, right, which is in a process of JV formation. So we are developing joint capacity, increasing our capacity of production in the country overall, and working on all feedstock. So EverEnviro is the one who have actually started development of this industry at initial level, right? And we already created a use case. We've created, you can produce, you can sell, you can market, you can aggregate biomass, and you can bring in technology and convert that into CBG. So based on that, we are now progressing forward with multiple projects in hand and multiple projects in pipeline. At the same time, we are seeing these CBG projects not just CBG but more of a biorefinery, because we know today CBG there is a market, and CBG can be produced. Organic manure, there is a need of soil health improvement, but also the other let's say byproduct which come out of that has a technological potential to create into further downstream projects. So
Okay.
that's our growth plan in terms of that, and we are actively pursuing demand, actually pursuing the capacity build.
So good luck for that, for sure. Last two, 3 points that I wanted to understand. One is what I'd asked you earlier. What is the throughput looking like? If you say you put 1 ton of biomass, how much of a biogas comes in? And is it profitable business from say year one, year two? Does it take more time? Of course, you said there are a couple of factors there, but say a CNG business makes margins of 20, 22%. What about biogas?
Yeah. So let's talk about potential yield potential first. So we have multiple sources like agriculture residue, like paddy straw. Paddy straw has a higher total solid content. It has
Yeah.
higher celluloid or homocelluloid, which converts into CBG. Then we have other sources like municipal solid waste, which is more water inside. It's a wet waste. It has less TS. Then we have industrial waste, and then we have cow dung. So cow dung would have about 1 to 1.5% of the yield potential, and rice would have more than 15% yield potential. And in between are 4 to 6% potential. So, but the use requirement of the feedstock would also change accordingly. So which means that the cost structure varies depending on the feedstock, technology use. When it comes to let's say commercial viability perspective, as I said, that from a various policies coming together is creating an environment today. However, when you look into whom are we competing with, we are competing with red. We're competing with fossil fuel based, and the price of fossil fuel depends on the global geopolitical demand supply and the location where you are. In this case, it's a manufactured gas. So we believe that slowly the price will be discovered based on the manufactured gas, right? And based on the various enablement, the demand pull, and the adjacency product development would allow this to be a healthy commercial viability.
Okay, so that again, as you said, some policy incentives, some more awareness, and because it's a good
And
product,
technology is early stage, so technology
it could be
efficiency
expensive
will
at
go
the
up.
start. Correct.
Will go up. So there is and the fact is that why large corporates are investing, they see value in that.
They do for sure, and that's been the big push by the government and generally by corporating as well. Mr. Girdhar, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you with us on the podcast and learning so much about biogas. We keep hearing these words. It's always good to de-jargonize when we read about them. So it was a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, all right. With that, we'll take your leave on this edition of Climate Clock podcast. As always, keep writing to us. Tell us what you want us to discuss in the show, and we'll bring that for you. Till then, we'll take your leave. Thanks a lot for tuning in.